The morning Adaeze Okonkwo landed at Incheon International Airport, the sky was the color of pale silk, a soft washed-out gray that she had never seen in Lagos. Back home, the sky was vivid, electric blue or bruised purple before a thunderstorm. Here in Seoul, the sky looked like it was thinking. Like it had not made up its mind yet. She was 17 years old. She had one overstuffed suitcase, a scholarship letter tucked carefully in the front pocket of her carry-on, and a heart full of quiet, stubborn ambition. Her mother had cried at the airport in Lagos, holding Adaeze's face in both hands the way she did when she wanted to memorize something. "You carry us with you," her mother had whispered. "Every step you take on that ground, you take for all of us." Adaeze had nodded, pressed her lips together hard, and boarded the plane before the tears could fall in public. She was not the kind of girl who cried where people could see her. Hanseong International High School sat on a gentle hill in the northern quarter of Seoul, a prestigious institution that drew students from across the country and, in rare cases, from across the world. The scholarship Adaeze had won was the school annual Global Excellence Award, given once per year to one international student who demonstrated exceptional academic achievement. She had competed against hundreds. She had won. Her dormitory room was small but clean, with a view of a courtyard where a single ginkgo tree stood gold and ancient. She stood at the window for a long time that first evening, watching leaves drift down in slow, unhurried spirals, and she thought, "I am really here. I am really, truly here." She pressed her palm to the cold glass and smiled, a private, fierce smile that belonged only to her. By the second week of school, Adaeze had learned many things about Hanseong International High School. She had learned which professor gave the hardest exams, which corner of the library had the best light, and which vending machine on the third floor was slightly broken in a way that sometimes gave 2 drinks for the price of 1. She had also learned about the boys everyone called the Razoil, a nickname whispered with reverence in the hallways. There were 4 of them. Kim Jung-go, the tall, cold-eyed son of a tech billionaire who drove a different luxury car to school depending on his mood. Park Seo-jun, whose family owned half the entertainment industry and who had actually appeared in a magazine spread at the age of 15. Choi Hyun-woo, whose laughter was the loudest thing in any room he entered, and whose family had recently purchased an island somewhere in the south. And last, Lee Dae-hoon, perhaps the most beautiful of all of them, the kind of face that made people stop mid-sentence and forget what they were saying. They moved through the school like weather. Wherever they went, the atmosphere changed. Girls straightened their postures. Boys stepped aside. Even teachers unconsciously softened their voices when speaking to them. They were wealthy in the way that felt almost geological, like it had been there forever, like it would always be there. Every morning, a small crowd gathered near the school gate to watch them arrive. Phones came out. Whispers rose like smoke. The 4 boys moved through the attention as if it were simply the texture of air, something they had breathed so long they no longer noticed it. Adaeze noticed all of this in the precise, academic way she noticed everything. She catalogued it, filed it away, and went back to her chemistry notes. She had not come to Seoul to gawk at rich boys. She had come to learn. She was, in this regard, unlike nearly every other girl in the school, and this fact did not escape notice. "Did you see the new scholarship girl?" she overheard one afternoon in the bathroom. She walked right past Jung-go this morning and did not even look at him. Not even once. Maybe she does not know who he is. Everyone knows who he is. Adaeze dried her hands, looked at herself briefly in the mirror, at the coils of her natural hair pinned up with a gold clip her mother had given her, at the deep, rich darkness of her skin, at the steady calm in her own eyes, and she walked back to class. It was a Tuesday in October when she first really saw him. She had stayed late in the school library, working on a paper for her advanced literature class. The library closed at 9, but the study annex on the second floor remained open until 11 for students with special academic access, a privilege she had applied for in her first week. She liked the annex. It was quieter than silence, if such a thing was possible. Even the dust seemed to have agreed to be still. She was bent over a collection of Korean short stories. She was learning the language with the same methodical intensity she brought to everything, when she became aware of another presence in the room. She looked up. He was sitting at the table by the window, the one that overlooked the courtyard and the golden ginkgo tree. A single lamp lit his space, and in that amber pool of light he looked like something out of an old painting. He was lean in a way that suggested he had not always had enough, with cheekbones that were sharp and expressive and eyes that were fixed on the page in front of him with the particular intensity of someone for whom reading was not a luxury but a necessity. He was not one of the four. She knew that immediately. This boy was different. His uniform was clean but faintly worn at the collar. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine that spoke of careful maintenance rather than easy replacement. His bag, set on the chair beside him, bore no designer name. He looked up. Their eyes met. He had the kind of eyes that seemed to be in conversation with whatever they looked at. He did not look startled or guarded. He simply looked at her with a quiet, open curiosity, as if she were an interesting sentence he had just encountered and was deciding what to make of. Then he looked back down at his book. Adaeze looked back at hers. But the room felt different now. It felt inhabited. And she found, to her own mild surprise, that she did not mind. His name, she would learn later from the class roster she had no reason to consult except that she wanted to, was Han Minjun. They did not speak for 3 more weeks. But they kept appearing in the same spaces. The annex, the quiet corner of the second-floor cafeteria where nobody fashionable ate, the narrow path behind the science building that led to a small garden no one else seemed to know about. He was always reading. She was always studying. And slowly, without plan or intention, a kind of understanding grew between them. The silent, almost cellular recognition of 2 people who are the same species of serious. It was raining the evening they first spoke. The annex roof had a leak above one of the central tables, and a bucket had been placed beneath it. The rhythmic drip punctuated the quiet. Adaeze had run out of ink and, after searching her bag thoroughly and finding nothing, looked up in frustration, and found Han Minjun watching her with the ghost of amusement on his face. He held out a pen. A simple, unremarkable pen. She stared at it for a moment, then at him. "Thank you," she said, in Korean. His eyebrows rose, not exaggeratedly, but genuinely. She watched him recalibrate. "Your Korean is good," he said. "It is getting better," she replied, also in Korean, because she believed the only way to learn a language was to live inside it, even uncomfortably. He smiled then, a real smile, not performed, not practiced. It started on one side before it reached the other, and it changed his entire face. It made him look younger and, somehow, much more alive. "I am Minjun," he said. "Adaeze," she replied. "Adaeze," he repeated, carefully, with a kind of respect for the syllables that moved something warm through her chest. "What does it mean?" "My father-daughter," she said. "In Igbo. My language." He was quiet for a moment, looking at her name as if he could see it written in the air between them. "That is a good name," he said, and she believed him, because he did not say it the way people say things to be polite. He said it the way people say things when they mean them. She gave him back his pen when she left that night. But she walked back to her dormitory with a feeling that something had been exchanged that was much harder to return. It happened gradually, and then all at once, the way most important things do. They began to be seen together, walking between classes, sitting in the library, eating in the quiet corner of the cafeteria, talking in a mixture of Korean and English, and once, memorably, with Adaeze teaching him 3 words in Igbo that made him laugh so hard he had to put his food down. The school noticed. Hanseong International was a school that ran, in large part, on social observation, on watching who sat with whom, who walked which way, who looked at whom and for how long. It was an ecosystem as complex and sensitive as any Adaeze had studied in biology. And what they were watching now was unexpected enough to destabilize the usual order of things. The scholarship girl, brilliant, beautiful, utterly indifferent to all the right people, was spending her time with Han Minjun. Han Minjun, whose family lived in a rented apartment in the Western District. Han Minjun, who was at Hansiang on academic merit alone. Han Minjun, who was not glamorous or wealthy or connected. Han Minjun, who was simply, quietly, stubbornly, extraordinarily, good. Her. With him. The whispers were confused more than cruel, at first. But he has nothing. Does she not know about Jungo? About Seojun? About any of them? She knew. She simply did not care. What she cared about was the way Minjun listened when she spoke. Not waiting for his turn to talk, but actually listening, as if what she said was worth the full weight of his attention. She cared about the way he challenged her ideas without belittling them, pushed back on her arguments with logic rather than ego. She cared about the fact that he had read more books than anyone she had ever met, and that he had opinions about all of them, and that his opinions were interesting. She cared about the fact that he asked about Nigeria. Not the way people sometimes asked, with a kind of vague, condescending pity dressed up as curiosity, but with genuine, specific hunger. He wanted to know about Lagos at night. About what her mother cooked on Sundays. About the sound of the rain there and whether it was different from the rain here. It was, she told him. It was louder. More certain of itself. He laughed at that. She decided she would spend the rest of the school year trying to make him laugh as often as possible, and she would not examine this decision too closely. She realized she was in love with him on a Thursday evening in November, during a power outage that lasted 40 minutes and left the entire dormitory wing in darkness. They had been studying together in the common room when the lights went out. Someone produced candles. The school kept them for exactly this kind of emergency, and the room became a collection of small, warm flames and the muffled sounds of other students complaining or laughing in the dark. Minjun had been reading something aloud to her, a passage from a Korean novel she was struggling through, and when the lights went out, he simply continued reading from memory. He knew it by heart. He kept reading in the candlelight, his voice low and even, the words flowing without effort, and Adaeze sat very still and felt something shift inside her with a slow, tectonic certainty of a thing that has been building for a long time finally arriving. She looked at his profile in the candlelight, the precise line of his jaw, the way his lashes cast shadows on his cheekbones, the slight movement of his lips around the words, and she thought, oh, this is what it is. This is what has been happening. She did not say anything. She was not the kind of person who announced her feelings the moment they became clear to her. She held the knowledge carefully, the way you hold something fragile, and she sat with it, and she listened to him read. Later, walking back to her room under a sky that had cleared to reveal a scatter of stars, she pressed her hand to her chest and felt her own heartbeat and thought about how strange and how inevitable it was. How she had crossed an ocean and landed in a country where she knew no one and nothing, and had found this one specific person in this one specific room, and how nothing about it was an accident even though none of it was planned. He told her on the last Saturday of November, in the small garden behind the science building, where the chrysanthemums had gone mostly to seed but still held their shape in the cold. They had been sitting on the low stone bench, their shoulders close enough to touch, drinking hot tea from thermoses she had brought because she had noticed he never brought enough warm things and it was getting cold. He had accepted the tea without comment. That was one of the things she loved about him. He accepted kindness without making it awkward, without a performance of gratitude so large it became about him instead of the gesture. He was quiet for a long time. She was used to his silences. They were not uncomfortable silences. They were the silences of a person who does not speak unless the words are ready. "Can I tell you something?" he said finally. "Yes," she said. He turned to look at her, and she turned to look at him, and they were very close. Close enough that she could see the small scar near his left eyebrow that she had never asked about and had always wanted to. "I think about you," he said. "All the time. I think about what you are going to say about things before you say them, and I am almost always wrong, and I like that. I like that you surprise me. I like that I cannot predict you." She was very still. "I know I am not," he paused. "I know what people say. About the difference between us. The money. All of it. I am not going to pretend I do not know." "Do not," she said. "Do not what?" "Do not apologize for what you are." She held his gaze steadily. "Do not do that." He was quiet again. Then he said, very softly, with a kind of careful honesty that made her chest ache, "I just want to know if you feel it too. That is all I want to know." And Adaeze, who had crossed an ocean to find something she had not even known she was looking for, who had held this particular feeling in her cupped hands for weeks like a small and precious fire, looked at Han Minjun in the cold garden with the dying chrysanthemums all around them and said, "I feel it too. I have felt it for a long time." He exhaled slowly. And then he reached out and took her hand, not dramatically, not urgently, Just took it, gently, like it was something he intended to hold carefully and for a long time. They sat in the garden until the cold drove them inside, and even then, neither of them let go. Word traveled fast at Hanseong International. By Monday morning, everyone knew. And something strange began to happen. Something that none of the watchers and whisperers had anticipated. The school, which had spent the better part of a semester watching Adaeze with puzzled fascination, began to really look at her. Not as a curiosity, not as a scholarship girl who had committed the social oddity of ignoring the right people, but as herself, as the girl who read 3 languages fluently, who debated professors with quiet, devastating precision, who wore her hair in magnificent, gravity-defying coils and moved through every room as if she had already decided she belonged in it. And beside her, they began to really look at Minjun, who had always been there, always been good, always been worth looking at, but had existed in the social shadow of 4 wealthy boys who drew all the light. They saw a young man of extraordinary intelligence and quiet strength, who spoke thoughtfully and worked hard and treated the girl he loved with a respect so natural it seemed almost radical. They were, together, magnetic in a way that no amount of money or status could manufacture. There was something real between them that people could feel, like warmth radiating from a genuine fire rather than the cold, decorative glow of an electric one. The 4 boys, Junggo, Seo-jun, Hyunwoo, Daehoon, watched this shift with expressions that ranged from confused to something approaching unsettled. They were not accustomed to being in the background. They were not accustomed to the hallways buzzing about someone else. They were not accustomed to irrelevance, even mild, even temporary. It was not that they had been forgotten. It was simply that something more interesting had arrived. Something their wealth could not buy and their looks could not simulate. A love story that was visibly, undeniably true. One evening, deep into December, Junggo found himself alone in the library annex, a place he had never willingly gone before. He told himself he was there for a book. He was not sure he believed himself. He sat at the table by the window, the one he had seen Minjun and Adaeze use countless times, and looked out at the ginkgo tree, now bare and skeletal against the winter dark, and he thought about something he had not allowed himself to think about in a long time. What he felt when he saw them together was not jealousy, exactly. It was something more precise, a kind of longing for the thing itself, for something real, for someone who looked at you the way she looked at Minjun, clearly, completely, without calculation. He had girls who wanted to be near him for the photograph. He had friends who stayed close for the connections. He had a father who measured love in the language of investment and return. He was wealthy beyond most people's comprehension, and he sat in the quiet library annex alone and felt, with a clarity that surprised him, the specific weight of what he did not have. He did not begrudge Minjun. He found, sitting with it honestly, that he could not. The boy had earned what he had with nothing but himself. There was a dignity in that which Junggo recognized without fully understanding it, the way you can recognize a language you have never learned but somehow know is beautiful. He stood, walked out of the annex, and in the hallway past Adaeze going in the opposite direction, her arms full of books, her gold hair clip catching the light. She nodded at him, a simple, unperformed acknowledgement. Not warm, not cold. Just honest. He nodded back. He walked to his car and sat in the driver's seat in the dark and the cold, and made a quiet, private decision to try, for the first time in a long time, to be someone worth looking at for the right reasons. The snow came on the final Friday of term, lightly at first and then with the full commitment of a Seoul December. The school courtyard was transformed. The ginkgo tree stood silver-white, its bare branches dusted and glittering. Students came out between classes to hold their faces up to the falling flakes, laughing and slipping on the new-made ice. Adaeze stood at the edge of the courtyard and watched the snow the way she watched everything, with her full attention, with wonder she did not bother to hide. She had never seen real snow before. Not snow falling from a real sky onto her own hands. She held her palms up and felt the flakes land and disappear, each one a tiny cold shock of something extraordinary. Minjun came to stand beside her. She did not hear him arrive. He moved quietly, always, but she felt him there, the familiar warmth of his presence against the cold air. "Well," he said softly. "It is colder than I expected," she said. "And smaller. The flakes. I always imagined them bigger." "Everything is smaller and stranger than you imagine," he said. And more beautiful. She turned to look at him. He was looking at her, not at the snow. She felt the warmth of that look travel all the way through her, down through the cold air and the winter coat and into the center of her chest where it settled like an ember. Minjun, she said. Adaeze, he answered, the way he always did. Her whole name, all 4 syllables, like each one mattered. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. Just briefly, softly, in the falling snow, in front of the ginkgo tree and the whole school. There was a sound from somewhere behind them, a collective, involuntary exhale, a rush of whispers. She did not hear it. She was not listening. When she stepped back, his eyes were still closed, and there was snow on his lashes, and he was smiling that slow, one-sided smile that she had decided weeks ago was one of the finest things she had ever seen. I am going home for the holiday, she said. To Lagos. To my mother. I know, he said. I will be here when you get back. I know you will, she said. She took his hand. The snow came down. Somewhere behind them, someone raised a phone, not to photograph 4 rich boys in expensive coats, but to capture a Nigerian girl and a Korean boy standing in the first snow of winter, holding hands beneath a tree that had gone silver overnight. It was a good photograph. It told the truth, which is the finest thing a photograph can do. They would tell the story of that year for a long time afterward. How a girl came from Lagos with a scholarship and a gold hair clip and quiet, immovable ambition, and how she walked past wealth and glamour and all the boys that everyone said she should have wanted, and found instead a boy by a window in a library, reading in the dark. They would say that Adaeze and Minjun became the most beloved students Hanseong International had ever known. Not because they tried to be, but because authenticity, true and unperformed, is the most magnetic thing in the world. They would say that Han Minjun, who had come from nothing, became something remarkable. Through his own effort, through his own mind, and perhaps in part through being loved fully by someone who saw exactly what he was and chose him anyway. They would say that Adaeze Okonkwo never lost herself. Not to the cold weather, not to the foreign language, not to the loneliness of the early weeks, not even to love. She brought herself, wholly, to every room she entered, and the rooms were always better for it. And in Lagos, her mother would hang the courtyard photograph on the wall, the one with the snow and the tree and 2 young people holding hands in the winter air, and she would look at it in the quiet evenings and feel the particular joy of a woman whose child has gone far away and found something worth staying for. Her father-daughter, standing in the snow, exactly where she was meant to be.